welcome to the Roll and Rock podcast presents Wrestlecast. I am your host Rene, and I am here. I am joined today by with Rocky,
Hey, everybody.
and we brought back Jose,
Hey, how's it going, guys?
and we have a new guest today, Shane.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you joining us.
New to Wreslecast, but not new to Rolling Rock.
Right.
Well, there we go. And today we are talking our personal favorite wrestling rivalries. Now, obviously, wrestling has a big, long history, so there's so many to name, but we're going to try to limit ourselves to about three apiece. And obviously, as I mentioned, there's so many in history, so this will definitely be a topic that will be will be talked about again later on. So just to get us kind of started, to kick it off, why don't we go with Rocky and talk about one of his favorite wrestling rivalries?
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with I'm going to say this is actually my favorite wrestling rivalry. Not because of everything that happens, just because of who it is, basically, and what he does, or what one of them does all the time. And that's Vince McMahon versus Stone Cold. And mostly the reason I love this is because there is nothing better than seeing Vince McMahon get the stunner. It's like the best thing in the universe.
Except for the very first time he took it like shit.
This was a great rivalry. It went on for years, actually. Like, and the one of the times that I'll never forget is when Stone Cold cemented Vince McMahon's car. Remember, he brought in the cement truck and he just poured the cement into his car.
Yeah, so I remember reading Austin's book, and he actually mentions that they bought that Corvette the day of. They just went to some used car lot where, like, yeah, we need that car, and just bought it like right there on the spot, and was like, all right, now let's get ready to pour cement into it.
I think that it was one of those rivalries that like cemented an era, like the Attitude Era. When you think of it, you think of Stone Cold stunning Vince McMahon. that's one of my first memories of that Attitude Era. But and then of course, it ended with Stone Cold turning heel and joining Vince. And
No.
JR giving that great line.
Yeah.
He sold his soul.
The Saint himself.
The son of a bitch. Now, one of my favorite things with Austin and McMahon was, it was such a hot storyline. It's basically what helped them overcome WCW and Monday Nitro. But just like some of the build up to it, they did a really good job of building up that Vince McMahon getting stunned, because like the first week you had like JR try to talk to Austin, and Austin stuns JR, and then the following week you have like Sergeant Slaughter, who was like the commissioner, and he's stunning all these authority figures, and finally you get Vince in the ring at like Madison Square Garden. And I want to say that's the first time they beat WCW in like 83 weeks in the ratings.
Really?
But it's definitely the rivalry that put them over the top, and they never looked back, man.
I was going to say that rivalry it's one of the reasons because I was a big WCW fan. So at the start of the Monday Night Wars, I didn't watch WWE at all, or WWF back then. I didn't watch it at all, and then I had a good friend, and I was in high school at this time, so I was like 16 or 17 or something, somewhere in there. And I had a good friend, and he watched, like, he was a huge WWF fan, and he started telling me about Stone Cold, and I knew Stone Cold from WCW days, and I was like, that's fucking Stunning Steve. He sucks.
He shaved his head. What's up with that?
No, I wasn't much into it, but he finally convinced me. Like, I actually went over to his house, and he convinced me to watch it. And it was the first times that Stone Cold and Mr. Man had the rivalry. And I fucking, was just falling in my chair laughing at some of the shit they did. And then from that night on, every Monday night, I would just flip back and forth between the two channels in between commercial breaks, like trying to watch both at the same time.
It's crazy because it's you could say it's one of the worst things that happened to Austin, but it also helped them so much was when he, broke his neck in the SummerSlam match versus Owen Hart, because he couldn't really compete for several months, but they still wanted Austin on television. So that's what led to, the cement in the Corvette, and then him driving the Zamboni into the arena and jumping from the Zamboni into the ring and getting arrested.
Beer bash.
The beer bash and all that stuff. So, would we have gotten all of that stuff if Austin could have just been in the ring the whole time instead of them trying to find creative ways to have him be on the program? But it's interesting to think about. What about you, Jose? Any fun Austin McMahon?
I mean, looking back at it now, it's very cartoonish, like the antics that they do back and forth to try to get at each other. And one thing I will say about it now is that it's something that they could still draw back to this day. Anytime you get McMahon and Austin on TV at the same time, there's still a pop to it. And you already know what's going to come. You already know he's going to stun him. McMahon's going to flop around ridiculously. But you still just wait for it. And when it happens, you still just pop to it. So it's something that even 20 years later, they are still drawing from it, even if it's, not at the same magnitude that it was back then, but they can still pull from there and give a moment.
Yeah, definitely the authority figure versus whoever the top faces and stuff like that. What about you, Shane? Any favorite Austin McMahon?
Man, anytime the glass breaks, the music hits, and Austin comes out, I'm just like, yeah, break open a beer, the man is here.
Yeah.
I can't really pinpoint one, man, but I just remember, like you was talking about, as far as somebody, the man having power over you or whatever, and fighting back against your boss or whatever's holding you back, and he just I think there was a lot of underlying themes there, but it was so captivating and drawing because of that, and of course Austin, he's one of the best ever on the mic, man. So that has a lot to do with it. But yeah, I just love the whole era in general.
I have to say, we're talking about like Austin. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure about you, Jose, but all the rest of us worked retail for a long time, or still is, and there is nothing I'm sure that all of us would like to do than kick our boss's ass any fucking day.
It's funny, Rocky, because I remember me and Larry when we were at the Shack talking about that, and we were talking about Austin and McMahon, and I looked at him, I said, who wouldn't want to kick their own boss's ass? And he got real quiet. And And I realized I didn't mean it like it sounded, but it come out like, yeah, I'd like to kick your ass, Larry. But he thought about it and he's like, yeah, I guess you're right.
I'll put it this way. I'll put it this way. If I ever really felt that the most, it was when I was in the military.
Right.
Either wanting to kick one of my petty officers' ass or one of my staff sergeants' ass when I was green tag with the Marines, or if it was an officer.
No. I'll say one of the Austin McMahon moments I always remember. One of them I'll say for one of the other rivalries because it's definitely going to come up, but is Austin stunning the entire McMahon family. I want to say it was so Raw had left the USA Network for TNN, and they finally came back like 5 years later on the very first episode back on the USA Network. Austin stuns Vince, and then Shane comes out to confront Vince, and he gets a stunner too. And then Stephanie comes out to confront Vince, and she gets a stunner. And then even Linda McMahon comes out there and like, you stunned my entire family. Like, what's wrong with you? And he stuns her too. But if you're looking for a McMahon who took a worse stunner than Vince's first time stunning Vince, is Linda.
That one was brutal.
Yeah. So we'll move on. And Shane, what's one of your favorite rivalries?
I'm a little older than you guys, so a couple of mine from mainly the '80s, but probably my favorite was Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes back in the old NWA, early WCW days. But those two guys, man, they were at war for pretty much all the '80s. And before you had Stone Cold and before you had The Rock on the microphone, these guys on the microphone were Stone Cold and The Rock on the mic. I mean, they were the cream of the crop. Just the best promo cutters that you can imagine, and it's because I think they believed it. I really think that they believed what they were saying. But those guys, they were awesome. What'd you say, Rock? I missed that.
I said they were so high on coke, of course they believed it.
I mean, you get bored riding in those, airplane jets and, riding with all those women and stuff. You got to have the candy with it. But I think it was '86, the Great American Bash, and that was like a 7-day event back then.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys remember that or not.
I do.
The Great American Bash, and I think halfway through, Dusty actually beat him a match. I don't know if they had 3 or 4 matches. I think it was just 3, but Dusty beat him for the belt, and Ric Flair was like, I'm not saying that Dusty Rhodes is a better man than me, but he was a better man that night. And I think Flair ended up going back and getting the belt like the end of the Great American Bash. But those guys, man, they just to me they were the best there was on the microphone. So
yeah, it's a pretty common trope, I guess. Dusty was the common man.
Yeah.
The son of a plumber, as he used to say, the American dream. And
the American dream, Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, anytime you talk about Dusty, you gotta do the list, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But
he made it sound good. He made it sound good,
And Flair was the rich asshole, basically. My shoes cost more than your house, as he would tell Shivani sometimes.
I wish we had Roland on this podcast because I love to hear him talk about. Because this was like the time when he was watching his grandmother. I love to hear him talk about how much his grandmother hated Flair.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a big rivalry because, like you just said, out of this rivalry, you had like 2 Starcades built around this rivalry. Dusty basically created the Great American Bash concept from this rivalry. He came up with the War Games based on this rivalry, the Four Horsemen versus Dusty's team. It's, they traded the world title back and forth a few times. Like, if you want to study great rivalries in wrestling, man, Dusty and Flair are it. Like you said, cream of the crop.
Mm-hmm. Great rivalries.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, great rivalries, great storytelling, and then from there you get one of the most replayed promos and well-known promos out of all time, which is the Hard Times promo from Dusty. And that is like something that, you've seen, I share like at least probably once a month on social media where I'll find it and I'll repost it just because it's that good of a promo and it evokes that much emotion from Dusty. And, he makes you believe that it really is reaching out to you. And that was, right after he was coming back from injury from where the Horsemen attacked him, and I think it was a broken arm or something like that. But,
yeah.
They made you believe it, like Shay said, like because they believed it that it was real.
Yeah, like you said, that Hard Times promo, and Dusty's also, he's dying with kings and queens and eating pork and beans.
Yeah.
That, like, people don't realize how much stuff Dusty came up with that wrestlers stole from. Like, you listen to some of Dusty's old promos, and like Hogan stole some of that shit, which, nothing's original anymore in wrestling, basically, but it all comes from somewhere. But yeah, Dusty was such an influential person, man. And yeah, like, those guys caused riots, man. I remember the Horsemen beating down Dusty inside a steel cage, and like, thank God they had the steel cage because people were like trying to climb that motherfucker to save Dusty.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. Was that at the Garden? Was that at Madison Square Garden, or was that somewhere else?
It might have been like either it was in South or North Carolina, or the Omni, maybe in Atlanta.
Yeah, it could have been the Omni. Could have been.
Yeah. If I had to come up with one negative, just because I hate how much it's overused in wrestling, is the Dusty finish.
Oh yeah,
the Dusty finish.
Yeah, where they make you think, like, say someone wins the world title and then they're celebrating, but then they're like, oh wait, the guy had his foot under the rope, so restart the match.
Yeah.
Shit like that. So that's something Dusty came up with, and they kind of used it a few times throughout the rivalry. But if I had to just do one negative thing about the feud, is the Dusty finish, man. So we'll move on to Jose. What's one of your favorite rivalries, man?
All right, favorite ones. I'll start from the '80s, and that'll be Hogan versus Savage, and
the Mega Powers.
The Mega Powers, how that started, and it was again that long-term storytelling. You had it from WrestleMania 4 when Savage won the title in the tournament, and the formation of the Mega Powers, to the implosion, to the eventual match where, of course, Hogan had to get the title because Hogan.
Yeah.
But much the same against had a lot of great promos, and that Macho Man was another one of those people in the 80s that could just cut an incredible promo. And, the lust in your eyes, I see that. And he would, again, probably high on snow too, just like everybody was during those times. But he could just, again, make you feel and sell that intensity that he had. And, and you look at it, you're like, well, he was not that wrong, because Hogan was kind of being, a little bit too much on the friendly side if you kind of look at that mindset that Macho had, and really feel like, hey, this is my wife, and you're being a little bit too
the
touchy, too close.
slow build of that lead up to that match is so well done, and something you don't really see. Like you said, at WrestleMania 4, like Hogan hugs Elizabeth, and Randy's already like, "Wait, what the fuck are you doing?"
Yep.
And at SummerSlam, Hogan puts Elizabeth up on his shoulder, and once again, Randy's
Macho's looking like hey,
side eyeing him, like, "What's going on?" Hogan's got lust in his eyes and shit like that. Randy was such an intense guy, man. And like you said, great build up, but like you said, Hogan must pose when it's all said and done, man.
Exactly. The 80s were his time in WWF, so he was the John Cena of back then, or however you want to put it this way. Cena being the Hogan of the 2000s, the 2010s. It's the same thing. They were basically the guy that had to always be on top. But even the match itself, granted, Hogan in WWF worked very limited because he worked safe, as opposed to like how you saw any of his matches in Japan, in New Japan, where he actually worked. He actually put some effort into the matches and match quality. They were still able to have a good match, and mainly just because Randy at the same time was also a great worker in the ring. He always made sure that all of his matches were meant to look good. And he would even, have them work beforehand to just kind of work spots over.
Yeah, after the WrestleMania stuff, I also liked how Savage went into the whole Macho King thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a feud that went on for a couple years there, and they even had it continue in the WCW as well. So it's definitely something that was ongoing for years. Behind the curtain, I know Hogan and Savage had a love and hate relationship. Like, if they could make money together, then it was all love. But if they weren't making money together, it was like, well, fuck this guy.
Exactly.
And stuff like that. And, there was that rumor that at WrestleMania 9, the reason Hogan has that black eye is because Savage punched him in the face, but it's never, no one's ever denied it or confirmed it. So who knows? What about you, Rocky? Any favorite Savage Hogan memories?
Well, I am wearing the hat, so I have to talk about like one of my favorite times with Savage and Hogan, which was when you had when Savage came on, and then you had the dissension between the NWO, and you got the start of the Wolfpack, with Savage being on the Wolfpack side and Hogan on the black and white side. And we all know I love the NWO, so but the Wolfpack is actually my favorite because kind of fuck Hogan, I love Savage instead. So like that was, they had matches back and forth then, and of course, Hogan took the title because, he's fucking Hogan and they give him whatever he wants. But they were great matches back then too, and we still had I will say, Savage, that voice, but him saying "too sweet" is like one of the best things ever.
I think we probably most likely all agree with this. When you were little kids, man, like Hogan was a bigger than life figure, man, in wrestling. Like, how could you not be a fucking Hulkamaniac? But when you go back and rewatch it as being older and stuff, you're like, holy fuck, is Randy Savage fucking great?
Exactly.
Great promo, great in-ring, great promo, great in-ring performer. Awesome presentation, man. Like, I don't think I ever saw him wear the same outfit twice. The robes, Like at WrestleMania 4, for all 4 matches, he came out in a different robe. Elizabeth was in a different dress for each match. And then when he later would go on wearing the leather jackets and the cowboy hats, and how it just, just great overall performer. And I feel like he's a guy, no matter what era he would have been in, he would have been a star.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I will say one more thing on that. This is, I think, the only rivalry where you had actually somebody cut a diss track on one of them, where Macho Man cut a diss track on Hogan. I think it was like the early to mid 2000s, called "Be a Man." When Macho Man actually did release an album. He did release a music album, and that was one of the tracks.
All right. So moving on to one of my picks is Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock. I think they have 3 of the best WrestleMania matches of all time. With WrestleMania 17 being the best of the 3, in my opinion. Definitely a 5-star match, and just a great rivalry. I think I mentioned one of the Austin McMahon moments that I enjoyed a lot. I was saving for when I talked about one of the other rivalries, is the beer truck. The Rock is in the ring cutting this great promo about going to WrestleMania 15 and how he's going to have Austin check into the Heartbreak Hotel and, fucking on the corner of Know Your Role Boulevard and, just bring it or whatever. And and Austin comes out in a fucking beer truck and a hose and just tells him tells The Rock, like, I'm going into Heartbreak Hotel, checking into room 316 and burning that son of a bitch down to the ground. And proceeds to spray them with beer. And one of the best things about this is McMahon for a second. McMahon's facial expressions or how he reacts to shit going on around him, there's no one better, man. So when Austin is like spraying down Rock, Shane, and Vince with this beer hose, McMahon is literally trying to swim in the fucking ring. And it is fucking fantastic. The way The Rock would sell the stunners too. I mean, this motherfucker would like fly back like 3 feet, do a backflip. It was so over exaggerated.
Yeah, some of his like the selling that Rock would do on those. I remember that because he would literally pause. His head would pop back up, and he would pause, and then he would back up, and then like flop like a fish sometimes. It was hilarious.
And then the build up to WrestleMania 17 is so amazing. If you watch one match this week, go back and watch Rock and Austin from WrestleMania 17, and then watch the video package that precedes it. Limp Bizkit, My Way, fits that video package so fucking great. And yeah, they just had great chemistry together, man, and great in-ring performances. We'll go to you first, Jose. What's one of your favorite like Austin Rock memories?
One thing that I like about their rivalry is how intertwined it went like across stages. Because first they feuded for the Intercontinental title, and you had where Austin threw the title over the bridge, and then what happens? Rock throws Austin over the bridge. You had Austin trash Rock's Lincoln. When you're talking about earlier, when you're talking about how they wrecked the Corvette, and then you also remember he destroyed the Rock's Lincoln, which was a gift, to him. And going to like the Rock's overselling, I think they said not that long ago that the whole reason that they did that is they would bet a case of beer if the Rock could overtop the overselling of the Stunner every time that he did it. But I really enjoyed it. It was like them and Triple H, like all three of them were kind of ascending around the same time in different orders, but they were, their careers were intertwined. So you had Austin and Rock going back and forth the Intercontinental title, then eventually the WWF Championship. But then you also had Triple H and Rock going over the IC title too at some point, and then over the championship to the WWF Championship, and then you just kind of have a little mingle between all three at certain times over the top, and being like the top guys, especially during like 99, 2000, and 2001, and really just elevating each other each time. I mean, you could say that granted Rock won the last of the three WrestleMania matches, but it was still, Austin willing to give him something for everything that he gave him to kind of help him go, even though he knew that Rock was going to already lead to Hollywood and, start that career off.
What about you, Rocky? Any favorite Austin Rock memories?
Yeah, like I think the biggest one I remember is the chair shots. And it was I think it was the last WrestleMania one? Austin like hit Rock with like repeated chair shots like over and over and over.
It was WrestleMania 17.
Yeah. Like that one, I remember that I was like, God damn.
Yeah, he gives him like 15 chair shots or some shit.
Yeah.
Wears him out.
He beat him like he owed him money. One of my favorite also is, do you guys remember the Rock concert where they ban Austin from the ring or from the building, and the Rock goes and does a rock concert? He's got like a Willie Nelson signed guitar, and he has Bischoff, who was the Raw general manager at the time, put speakers outside the building just so Austin could hear the concert. And they're in Sacramento, and The Rock is like singing about how the best thing about Sacramento is when he gets to leave Sacramento in about an hour. And he also delivers one of my favorite lines where he's like, Sacramento has nothing but fat, ugly women, and The Rock's just gonna say no. And then to finally top it off, just to like really get the crowd against him, he's just like, I'll be back in May when the Lakers beat the Queens, baby. Just to get the real heel heat going. And finally, like, Austin just drives through the building and just proceeds to like break his guitar and all that stuff. It was really good stuff.
I think it's interesting in that whole series there because nobody at the time really could match The Rock on the mic, and Austin was the only guy who could do it. I'm all about promos and who can talk the best because they can all wrestle pretty much, But as far as like the talkers, the entertainers, like The Rock was up there, and like Austin was the only guy who could keep up with him. And I remember there was bantering one night in the ring at each other, and Rock was making fun of him and saying all those little cute remarks. And Austin, could put him, kind of put him in his place a little bit just by saying one word. What? And he delivered it so well. It's just, it was a very equal match. physically, but also verbally, and that's what intrigued me about the whole thing. Is Austin was the only one that could be right there with The Rock on the mic. So,
yeah, one of my favorite moments in the rivalry too is like right before their WrestleMania 17 match. They have JR do an interview, and on one side you got Austin, on the other side you got The Rock, and I guess in a way you could say that they kind of plant the seeds for Austin's heel turn, because during the interview he basically says like, I will do whatever it takes to walk out with that title, and it's such a great promo, and it, like you said, like Dusty and Rick, it was two guys at the height of their popularity and their prime, and it was just amazing. All right, so moving on. We'll start with Jose this time. What's one of your other favorite rivalries?
All right, for just to kind of not keep on the same, for this one, I'll go with Mick Foley and Triple H. That one was one that I did enjoy because it was one that kind of helped get Triple H to being a main guy. They, again, as I was saying earlier, you kind of had him, ascending little by little, kind of being the third guy. So you had like Austin Rock at 1 and 2 and Triple H at 3. But then you had Mick always being that one guy that they could rely on for just about anything with anybody and work with anybody. And by that time, he had become the sympathetic character that, you could just want to see him, you could feel for Mick. And he knew how to play on emotions. So even when they had the, I think it was SummerSlam 99, when they had the triple threat match with Ventura as the ref, and you had Mick win, but then the next night, Triple H gets it over on Mick, and then eventually just, goes back and forth, leading until their matches at the Rumble, and then the Hell in a Cell match the next month, which was supposed to be Mick's retirement, but we all know that WrestleMania 2000 came around and, they threw a lot of money at him and essentially brought him back. But those two matches right there told good stories for getting Hunter over as like this sadistic bastard, and just kind of really cementing him as a top heel at the time, and really establishing what would, how he would ascend later on down the line with multiple title reigns now, having the Reign of Terror like a year or two later. And it was really, and at the time, especially when he did brought back Cactus Jack, which was my favorite Foley character out of all the ones that he has. That one was one that I really felt when, like, all right, he's got to win as that guy, and he still did, and it was just like, fuck. But that one was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, that street fight at the Royal Rumble 2000 is fucking insane. Like, whatever weapon they could have used in that match was used, and like you said, the build up to that, Triple H, the McMahon Helmsley regime at the time, they had fired Foley, and The Rock basically had the entire locker room be like, well, if you don't bring him back, the entire locker room is walking out. So then they bring back Foley, and Triple H beats the shit out of Mankind that night. And then the next night on SmackDown, Mick comes out still wearing the same bloody shirt from the night before, and he's just like, you know what? I can't fight you, Triple H. Like, Mankind cannot beat you. But he's like, I know someone that can, and his name is Cactus Jack. And he takes off the bloody shirt, and Triple H sells it like fucking Jason Voorhees or something that's coming down the ramp.
Exactly.
And it's one of my favorite promos, and I don't think Mick gets the respect he deserves when it comes to cutting promos. At times, I think he's very underrated. But yeah, Triple H selling it like, holy fuck, I'm going to fucking die at the Royal Rumble.
Yep.
That's probably one of my favorite Foley Triple H moments is that promo. And the Royal Rumble match itself, is the opening of that pay-per-view has a great video package for the Foley Triple H rivalry. You know, for anyone listening, if you get a chance, just go look at that opening video package, and then check out the match itself. The match itself is fucking nuts. Triple H had to go to the hospital after that match because at one point Foley suplexes him onto a wooden plank, and part of the wooden plank just lodges itself into Triple H's leg. So for like the last 20, for the like a 4 or 5 inch splinter is sticking out of Triple H's leg for like the last 20 minutes of that match. And Foley also takes a pedigree into thumbtacks, which he still kicks out of, which wasn't planned. And supposedly Triple H was like, what the fuck? And Foley was like, do it a second time, because now they're going to be like, holy shit, this guy's sadistic. Yep. So he knew what he was doing to put him over. You mentioned the Hell in a Cell a month later. It's a great match, but I don't think it was as great as the street fight. And the Fatal 4-Way at WrestleMania, it was all right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the street fight is where it's fucking at. What about you, Rocky? Any favorite Foley Triple H memories?
Well, mostly it's what you guys been talking about here, but I actually remember the Hell in the Cell match quite a bit. And one of the reasons I remember it is because of the cell breaking and Foley sticking halfway through the mat. You remember that scene?
Yeah.
It's one of my biggest memories of their feud, because just that mat broke and Foley landed there. I mean, there's so many Foley moments where he's fucked up beside a ring. And a few of them stick out to me. I mean, of course, the tooth, but this is another one that's always stuck out to me. And it was, I think the biggest thing that I take away from the Triple H Foley matches, though, is the return of Cactus Jack. I fucking love Cactus Jack, and I love his character, and I remember him all the way back to the days, when he used to be with, I think it was Terry Funk, but he called himself Chainsaw Charlie at the time. Mm-hmm. And those were great fucking matches. Insane matches, actually. But
for a second, when you said old school, I thought you were going to mention Cactus versus Vader in WCW too.
Yeah, those were some good.
Oh, those were wars.
They were nothing compared to the Chainsaw Charlie versus Cactus Jack matches. I mean, the shit they done were I don't know, if I would have actually been in the arena during those matches, I would have shit myself. If they would have. That's how fucked up they were. But when he came back as Cactus Jack during Triple H, I remember back then I was like, oh fuck yes, what are we gonna see? And it did not disappoint.
and that's what I'm saying. This was Mick Foley literally just taking off a white T-shirt and having a Cactus Jack shirt underneath, and people were like, "Holy fuck!" It's like he just changed his shirt, but people were fucking going nuts. I thought, man, when wrestling is great, it is some of the best fucking entertainment around. I don't care what anybody
Absolutely.
says. What about you, Shane? Any favorite Mick Triple H memories?
Yeah, Rocky's right, by the way. Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack, they would, I mean, I think they took a few fans out when they were wrestling in the stands, if I'm not mistaken.
All over the fucking arena, and they would like literally, and he would carry that fucking chainsaw, and it was turned on. I mean, of course, it didn't have no blade in it, but like, could you imagine like somebody throwing somebody with a fucking chainsaw in there, and you're like in the arena, and they're coming toward you, and be like, "Fuck, get the fuck away from me!"
Yeah,
You just hear that motor rev. You just hear the fucking motor rev. You're like, fuck this.
And they would wrap the rings in barbed wire, and there would be thumbtacks fucking everywhere. Like, it was fucking. They were fucking insane matches.
Yeah, that was a Raw where I don't remember the exact storyline going on, but apparently they were both like, you know what? Like, it's a fight between the two of us. Let's settle this. No gimmicks. So I want to say it's the first time that Mankind or Cactus went out there. He's like, I'm Mick Foley, and that's Terry Funk.
Yeah, I don't know
no gimmicks, just beating the shit out of each other.
When Cactus Jack actually like first showed up in WWE, but I mean, like I said, I'm older than you guys. I remember the guy on WCW, NWA. I remember on AWA with Von Erichs and all that stuff. I mean, he's been around a long time, but I don't remember like the first time he showed up on WWE. But when that happened, I was like, oh my God, it's Cactus Jack. What are we gonna see? You know, but was that like the first time he showed up on WWE?
No, so I was actually going to mention this also as one of my favorite Foley Triple H memories. So Triple H is going out there. It's at Madison Square Garden, 97, somewhere mid 97. And on the big screen, you have Dude Love on the big screen. And Dude Love is like, you know, being in a street fight's not my bag, baby, or whatever. And he has Mankind show up. So now it's like a split screen, so they're like talking to each other. And Mankind's like, well, I'm too scared to fight Hunter Hearst Helmsley in a street fight or whatever. But we both know a guy who is down with this type of style. And then they're like, why don't we introduce them? And then Cactus Jack shows up, and, you know, you have all faces of Foley on the screen at once. And Triple H is just like shitting his pants in the fucking ring. And Cactus Jack comes out there. And this was at Madison Square Garden, so the entire fucking arena
was he dragging the garbage can? He's dragging the garbage can? Yeah.
It's the one that ends with Cactus giving Hunter the pile driver through a table on top of the stage and pins him after that. But that was Cactus's first appearance. And
the guy had been around for probably 20 years before that, and you know, in different places. Yeah. And that's
but yeah, that's also one of my favorite Foley Triple H memories. The first time Cactus goes out there, and so it was a nice callback to the 2000 feud when once again Cactus comes out and Triple H is like, "Well, fuck."
Yeah,
I have to give it to Mick Foley. The fact that he can play 3 different characters at the same time, and every single person in the audience like reacts differently to those same 3 characters as the same person. Like, I remember, like I said, like, as soon as I seen him as Cactus Jack, like, I got images of those matches with Chainsaw Charlie, and I was blew my fucking mind at that moment. And I was like, what the fuck?
Do you guys remember Royal Rumble 98? Foley actually came out 3
as
times
all 3
in the Royal Rumble. So he was like number 1, and he came out as Mankind. And then he got eliminated at some point, and then like at number 17, he came out as Dude Love. And then he got eliminated, and then at like number 30 or something, he came out as Cactus Jack.
Yep, I remember that Rumble.
But
well, one of the things that I like too about their rivalry is, like you said, there's a lot of callbacks from between different time places, but it's the fact that when Foley won the title for the first time, it was with the help of DX and Hunter, essentially, helping him beat The Rock. And, they helped him celebrate, carried him around the ring. Mrs. Foley's baby boy finally did it. The great call. And, of course, you had the call from Shivani that night, they're putting the title on Mick Foley. That'll put butts in seats, which it did. And then it goes full circle that, at the Hell in a Cell match, essentially Hunter ends his career at that point, and Foley ends up putting him over in the long run.
Yeah. I also mentioned a steel cage match that they had at SummerSlam '97, where Foley ends up doing the Jimmy Snuka spot.
Yeah, rips the shirt off.
Yeah, because Foley always talked about that as a wrestling fan, how, when he heard Jimmy Snuka was fighting, I think, Don Morocco in the steel cage, he like hitchhiked all the way from Long Island to New York City just so he could see that match. And he always talked about Snuka jumping off the 15-foot steel cage match. So when Foley got a chance to repeat that spot, and it's crazy because they've actually shown footage of the Snuka Morocco steel cage match, and they've actually have shown video of Mick Foley being in like the third or fourth row watching it. And it's awesome that he got to do that spot himself.
Yeah.
And what made him big wrestling fan and stuff like that. But yeah, making Triple H was such a great rivalry.
I would say what I like about that moment when you said that, because I've forgotten about that, is because in the promo to that whole thing that led up to that spot in the cage, they showed that, Mick as a kid, doing a dive off a roof on his buddy who was on mattresses, and, basically doing a, backyard, which you remember from me in high school. I did the backyard wrestling shit too. And then I got my own little moment like that, jumping off the roof, doing a splash through a table.
Yeah, you guys were fucking nuts, man. All right. So moving on, Rocky, what's one of your other favorite rivalries in wrestling?
Back to an old school one now. Jake the Snake versus Randy Savage. Now this rivalry had a fucking match in it that made half the children in the world cry.
I was one of them. If it's the match you're talking about, if I think you're talking about, yeah.
Me too. I was also one of these children. It was the match where Jake the Snake unleashes the snake on Macho as he's tied up in the ropes, and he fucking just lets it bite into him. Just goes forever. Like that scene, that is like a scene that's like burnt into my mind from being a kid and watching this. And I think that's why I'm scared of snakes until this day, is because
So Jake the Snake, he just did a podcast with on Talk Is Jericho, and he actually talks about that night during the podcast. He basically says that Savage was so paranoid at that point. He's like, well, how do I know that snake's not poisonous? And Jake is like, because, we devenomized it or whatever. And Savage literally told him, like, I want to see that snake bite you before we go out to the ring. And And Jake is like, "You're out of your fucking mind." And Randy's like, "We're not leaving this locker room until that snake bites you, and I know that you're not gonna fucking kill me out there." So Jake is like, "Well, fuck," you know. So he lets the snake bite him in the locker room or whatever. And of course, Jake is like just fucking heated. He is fucking pissed. So before he goes out to the ring or whatever, you know, Jake says he just starts slapping the fuck out of the snake just to piss it off even more. He's like, and he said when it was time to let it clamp down on Randy, he said that snake was fucking, you know, it was heated, you know, like. So he said, I got that motherfucker back. But he said, yeah, when the snake bit down on Randy, he said, like, and they had to like pull it off of him. Like some of the snake's like teeth broke off into Randy's skin and stuff like that. But that's probably the biggest thing I remember from that rivalry, man, is like all the little kids in the crowd were just fucking in tears crying, man. And great promos too. I mean, you had two of the great promo guys.
I have to say though that like, yeah, Macho Man is great at promos, but Jake the Snake, he fucking like outweighs Macho Man by a mile. Like, he fucking destroyed Macho on the mic, as he does pretty much everybody. He's still doing that in the AWA, destroying everybody on the mic, even though he's not wrestling now.
AEW, you mean?
Yeah. He's just like, his promos are fucking great. He is like an old school promo kidder, and they just fucking work. Like, no matter what. Plus, I mean, Jake the Snake is also, you look at him and you think that he just wants to fucking kill you just the way he looks at people. Like, I have to say.
He gives the whole serial killer vibe.
Yeah, he does.
Jack the Snake is just crazy, first off. I mean, he's just fucking nuts, which makes it work because you're in wrestling and you have to be nuts, kind of a little bit, but he's just full-blown fucking cuckoo. So that's why it works for him. Yeah, I agree with you. One of the best promo cutters ever. But it's because he's crazy. I remember that Vince McMahon said one time, I don't remember what show it was on, but he said, you know, I don't know if I'm talking to Jake Roberts the man or Jake the Snake the character. And the reason because they were the same person, Vince. They were the same guy, you know, just nuts. But yeah, I'm scarred from the whole snake thing too. When I was a kid, you thought that Jake the Snake was pushing it further into his arm or whatever, and you watch it now and you're like, God damn, he's trying to get some bitch off there. So, so it's a little different perspective, you know, when you're not 9 years old watching a snake bite into his arm.
I actually seen that. It's probably the same podcast that you watch. It may have been a different one, but Robert's talking about that, and he said that he leaned into Macho about it, like while it was going on, and Macho even told him to let it go on a little bit longer. He said, he said that Macho was like, this hurts so fucking bad. He goes, but we're making so much money right now. Let it go.
Oh my God.
I also remember what this feud is at the SummerSlam where Randy and Elizabeth got married, and they're opening up wedding gifts or whatever, and one of the boxes actually has a snake in it, and all of a sudden fucking Jake the Snake and the Undertaker show up at the reception and just lay out Savage and shit.
That was
one of those
beginning of it, wasn't it? I think that was
What's up?
I think that was the start of the rivalry.
Yeah, that was the start. And what were you gonna say, Jose?
Well, one of the things about that too is that you had one of those few moments where Jake actually, you know, slapped Elizabeth, and if you watch the Dark Side of the Ring episode, the one about Elizabeth and Randy, her family thought that was real, and they were like legit pissed off at Randy because she got hurt, not knowing that it was a work. But that little moment in itself just kind of gave it that much reality to the storyline. And again, just the way Jake would just word things and how he would cut his promos, that he just made it real to them.
I remember, I think WWE got a lot of heat over that too, just with Jake slapping Miss Elizabeth. And then the like you guys were saying with Jake's promos too, man, he would do like that low talking thing, and like the camera would just zoom in on him, so you could hear what he was saying. And it's a different feud, but do you guys remember when the model Rick Martel squirted the perfume in his eye or whatever?
Oh yeah.
And he was doing that promo, and then he had like those contacts in his eyes that made him look even crazier. But yeah, Jake was an intense guy, man. And like Rocky said, if you watch AEW now, he's still one of the best promos out there.
I didn't even know he was in AEW. So he's in AEW right now, really?
Yeah, he's managing
Lance
who is
Archer.
he managing? Lance Archer? Okay.
Mm-hmm. He's a guy that if you watch New Japan, you know who he is, because other than that, he hasn't really had that much of an impact in stateside wrestling. He's been more overseas.
I don't watch AEW, but I've just been watching. I watch Jake the Snake promos on YouTube.
Yeah.
I
So
was gonna say he doesn't really need a promo guy, but I think Jake would fit pretty well with like Brody Lee or something like that.
Oh yeah, if they put him with like Dark Order.
Yeah, I think that would be a better fit for him. All right, so moving on to one of my favorite rivalries, probably because I just recently watched some of it. Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels. It's a feud that started at the Royal Rumble 05 after Shawn super kicks Angle out of the ring in the Royal Rumble match. And Angle proceeds to beat the ever-living shit out of Shawn after that. But one of my favorite things about the rivalry is how Angle was like, in the build-up to the WrestleMania match, is that he said he's going to do everything that Shawn had done in his career in 4 weeks, basically. So the first week, he actually had a match they brought back Marty Jannetty, and Angle had a match against him. And it was actually a really fucking good match. And then like the following week, they had Angle compete in a ladder match against some jobber or whatever. And then one of the funniest moments to me ever in wrestling history. So it's on SmackDown. Shawn Michaels music hits, crowd is going nuts and thinking Shawn is coming out, and instead it's Kurt Angle coming out wearing the chaps like Shawn, wearing a Shawn Michaels shirt, but has the HBK word scratched out, and has Sensational Sherry come out with him, and then he proceeds to say that he's going to have an even better theme song than Shawn, and has Sherry scream into the mic. And then he goes into a rendition called Sexy Kurt and how he'll make your ankle hurt. And he'll make you, dude. He's doing all the gyrations and shit like Sean. It is one of the funniest fucking things you will ever see. It is so great. It finishes with him doing the ankle lock on Sherry, but it's such a fucking hilarious promo. But the match itself, I would honestly say, is the top 5 WrestleMania match of all time. It's a 35-minute match. It's fucking nuts, dude. Angle went on to win that match. They would have a rematch a couple months later, and then they would do a 30-minute Iron Man match after that, a couple weeks after that. That ended in a tie. So they never really had the ultimate deciding match in the rivalry, unfortunately. So it basically ended tied 2-2. And they never really had any other like one-on-one matches after that. But Angle is such a great heel. Whether he's playing it seriously or when he wants to be the goofy heel, he's fantastic either way. Any favorite Angle Shawn memories? Anyone else? Rocky?
Now, I don't really remember this rivalry too much. Maybe I think it was like toward the end of me, like watching. Yeah. But I think I do remember the match. This wasn't like WrestleMania like 21.
Yeah.
This is the one that starts off with the big slap toward the face. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, where Kurt is just like smirking at Sean, and Sean just slaps the fuck out of him.
So that's the thing that I remember about this is that match and how it went on fucking forever. It was such a long match, and it was just basically like a war between these two. And I agree with you. It's like a great fucking match. It's like one I remember, but the slap is the thing that I remember the most. Like the start of the match was just like, bam.
Yeah.
Like
the spot I remember the most in the first match is Angle doing the Angle slam into the ring post. Like he picks him up to do the Angle slam, but instead of doing the slam itself, once he has him up on his shoulders, he just throws himself back into the ring post, like, and Sean's back, like, basically bends in half, dude. It's fucking nuts, dude. What about you, Jose? Any favorite Sean?
Out of the 3 matches, that was definitely my favorite one, and it's easily in one of like my top 3 favorite Kurt Angle matches. Period. That one, and the Sexy Kurt promo to this day still has me rolling when I see that come up or when I watch it online. I mean, Kurt could get comedy down so great. Like he was such a goof at it that it was just a natural comedic timing for him. And then at the same time, you could also see him get via the serious heel, and he's like just a freaking cyborg. That he's just ruthless, cold, and he knew how to go from one to the other very seamlessly.
Yeah, his my favorite like goofy heel Kurt has more to do with like usually like Rey Mysterio.
Oh, yeah.
One of my favorite goofy Kurts is where he's like telling Rey Mysterio how he's a little boy and he's a man and he likes playing with little boys or whatever, and he's like, "No, wait." He's like, "That's not what I meant," or whatever. Or at one point, he tells Ray, like, "You have to be this tall to fight an Olympic gold medalist," or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great rivalry. Like I said, I wish we could have seen more of it, but this was kind of towards the end of Kurt Angle's. He'd be gone about a little over a year after this feud started. Fortunately, his demons were getting the better of him at the time. But yeah, I mean, the matches themselves were incredible. What about you, Shane? Any favorite Angle Shawn memories?
I don't remember the rivalry per se that much, and I'll tell you why. Shawn Michaels. I never cared about Shawn Michaels unless Triple H was with him. First off, okay, because I just didn't think he was funny unless he had Triple H with him. And the other thing, though, as far as Kurt goes, I feel that he, as much success as he had, I feel that he was probably maybe the most underused talent that Vince ever had. I just feel like you all talking about the comedy stuff. I mean, he just had such a knack for that and the timing, like you said. And it was like at times they didn't know whether they wanted him serious or being a goof or, especially when he first got there, he's a heel or whatever. They tried, they fooled everybody. Oh, he's going to be a good guy, whatever. But I just feel like he was the most underused talent Vince ever had. That he just never, and he had plenty of success. It's just, I don't think he ever met his full potential. Maybe you guys think different, but
it's crazy how fast he adapted to everything. Like, because he ended up winning the heavyweight title within a year of his debut. And like you said, when he first debuted, he was supposed to be the All-American babyface. And they say that the second he went out there and the crowd kind of shitted on him, they say Vince got in the ref's earpiece and told the ref, hey, tell Kurt to get on the mic and just fucking shit on the crowd. Like he had him turn on the spot, basically.
Yeah.
Supposedly. So yeah, that's when Angle, like right away, he was able to cut a promo. He got on the mic, was like, how dare you guys boo me? I'm an American hero. I'm an Olympic gold medalist. And people are shitting on him, but it's crazy how fast he was able to adapt. And you're right. Like, I feel like he should have been a champion for way longer than what he held the titles for. I think it's just one of those things that maybe having Austin and Rock around at the very beginning when he was first starting kind of hurt him a little bit. But he'll definitely go down as like one of the all-time greats, though.
I just have to throw this out here because I think, hands down, the funniest moment that ever happened in WWE back in those days was the moment that Austin, when he was like playing, hamming it up with Vince, and he was on Vince's side, and they had the big thing going on. But
I think I know where you're going.
The moment that Austin gives Kurt Angle the little fucking cowboy hat, funniest fucking thing that they ever did. And like Kurt Angle's reaction to that is fucking amazing.
Dude, it's between that or the guitar playing.
Yeah.
And Angle starts singing Jimmy Crack Corn. Like I said, man, when wrestling is great and wants to be actually funny, it's fantastic, man. All right, so we're moving on to each person's last pick for this episode. We'll start with Shane. What's your final?
Last one, I guess. Maybe before your guys' time again. I'm throwing in the 80s wrestling here, guys. The Midnight Express against the Road Warriors back in the NWA days. They did the actual first scaffold match in 87 Starrcade. And somebody had a broke arm before in that match. I want to say it was Hawk. I could be wrong. One of them was hurt pretty bad, but they still climbed up that stupid scaffold. Midnight Express was Bobby Eaton, and I think it was Michael Hayes was his name. Can't remember exactly. But they had
Stan Lane. Stan Lane.
Stan Lane, that's who it was. Not the Freebird, yeah. But they had one of the best managers ever of all time, and Jim Cornette. And he can cut promos like no other. I mean, my grandmother, you talk about Rocky's grandmother hating, or Roland's grandmother hating Flair. My grandmother hated Jim Cornette. I mean, she despised Jim Cornette, but he was just so good at what he did. You know, that's how you know a heel's good, when everybody hates him.
Is that scaffold match? Is that the one where someone was supposed to catch Cornette? I think Bossman was supposed to catch Cornette and completely missed him.
Maybe, I don't know. Did Cornette end up on top of the scaffold?
He fell off the scaffold, and Bossman was supposed to catch him, and he sort of caught him, but he didn't catch him the way he was supposed to, and I think Cornette broke his leg or something like that.
He blew out his knees.
I mean, yeah. I don't know why any of those guys did that match, because back in the day, that was stupid. They were like 50 feet above the ground, and it was just a ridiculous match to begin with, because somebody could have got killed real easy. But
and the scaffold was rickety as fuck too, man.
Yeah, and but at the time you had we was talking earlier, the Four Horsemen. You had back then it was the Rock and Roll Express. You had the Road Warriors, and you had the Midnight Express, and a few other tag teams out there, all trying to grab all the gold. But so the Road Warriors and the Midnight Express really had a shorter window than you would expect. But when they did their promos against each other, I'm a promo guy, sorry. You had Jim Cornette on one side, just lighting into people as hard as he can light into them, and on the other side, to me, the most underrated promo cutter, most underrated guy on a microphone was Hawk from the Road Warriors. I mean, just his delivery, come in and say, "Well, Tony Schiavone," and just the way he delivered everything, and of course the famous line was, dine on danger, snack on death, or dine on, what was it? Snack on danger and dine on death.
And death.
And of course, Cornette and Hawk just cut the rope. And they had Paulie Dangerous. Yeah, they had Paulie Dangerously too, man. He could cut some promos, but nobody was better than Hawk and Cornette going at it. And I miss those type of promos.
Well, me and Jose are both from Chicago, which is where Hawk and Animal were from, and anytime I ever saw a show at the Allstate Arena, man, and they came out, they would get such a huge pop, man. And that Doomsday device was such a fucking killer finisher for a tag team, man. They said in the interview once, if there was a match where they didn't do the Doomsday device, it's because the other team was too scared to take it.
Well, I would say, for that matchup, and again, I've watched a lot of stuff more in retrospect, especially the 80s stuff. The Road Warriors at the time were just a brutal, brutal team. And they would really just kind of steamroll through a lot. So the fact that they had somebody that could actually match with them and go and take it to them as much as, they would dish it out, which it was something that didn't happen too much in the 80s for them. They didn't really have somebody that could, take what they had and then give it back to them. So the fact that, Midnight Express going ahead and, push it up into a scaffold match really says something about them as well, and how they built up that rivalry. And you had two greats on the mic, Cornette and Hawk, just being able to sell that match just on promos alone.
Mm-hmm. I know you mentioned Paulie Dangerously, but I think you're you're thinking of is what was the actual Road Warriors? They had a manager, but it wasn't Dangerously. It was
Paul Ellering.
Paul
Ellering,
Ellering.
Yeah. Sorry, I misspoke.
That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, Paul Ellering. He was a big part of the team too. And so have you guys always called them the Road Warriors? Which name do you prefer, Road Warriors or Legion of Doom?
They're the Road Warriors, man. I don't care. I mean, they are the road. I mean, and back in the NWA days, they would call it. Tony Schiavone would say, "What's the Legion of Doom? The Road Warriors." You know, he would announce them that way back in the day. And I mean, to me, it's the Road Warriors. I mean, that whole thing in the WWE. Once again, you know, WWE was like, you know, the gateway drug for me, I guess, into wrestling or whatever. But WWE just they didn't use the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, whatever, to their full potential, you know. And I know they had the whole thing with Demolition or whatever, and that was cute. But you know, back in the day, see, the thing was in the NWA, and it kind of led over to the WCW, is they had like on Saturday nights they did their show 2 hours, and like the setting was probably no bigger than the WWE's performance center that they use where they practice or whatever, and they had a little crowd there, probably about 100 people, and then they had at first it was Jim Ross for a while, then he quit and went to WWF, and then it was Tony Schiavone, but it was mostly just, you know, beating up the little guys. You know, your big names come in, wrestle, and nobody win, and then that was promo time. That was 2 hours pretty much of promo time, and you know, it was just a very intimate setting. You know, Tony Schiavone be interviewing everybody, and then he'd, you know, interview the Four Horsemen later, you know, then interview the Rock and Roll Express later. But it was just 2 hours of promo time, man. It was just I miss that type of platform, you know, where, you know, we'll do the matches later, but right now it's promo time. Let's say whatever you got to say.
And then, not to go on to a big tangent, but that little studio thing that you're talking about, like some of the greatest promos in wrestling history, that's where the Hard Times Dusty promo happened. That's where Arn Anderson announced themselves as the Four Horsemen. That's where you know, Ric Flair did his, you know, limousine riding, jet flying, or I'm the dealer because, you know, this title right here says so, and shit like that. So yeah, it's that little studio show was a really big part of wrestling history.
And I think going on that, that's the one thing that I really enjoyed about NWA Power. You know, when they brought it back and they started doing that kind of format again to studio wrestling, and it was a nice throwback before all of this, of course, happened and everything kind of had to go sideways. It kind of gave it that feeling again where even though it was only about an hour, it was probably the most entertaining hour of wrestling throughout the week. You know, Raw has 3 hours. It's a, you know,
I remember
chore to go through. Sorry, who was saying?
No, I think
I remember watching Road Warriors one time during that. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
You broke up a little bit.
Frozen?
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh, am I here still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go for
I remember in that studio, one of those studio shows, the Road Warriors come out and wrestled two nobodies. And before their music was stopped playing, because back then they used Iron Man by Black Sabbath. Before the music stopped playing, the match was over. They beat them that quick so they could run over and start doing their promo. And, I mean, I just remember stuff like that, man. It was just awesome, you know?
Yeah. To answer my own question from earlier, I've always referred to them as the Legion of Doom, but as individuals, it's Road Warrior Animal and Road Warrior Hawk. That's how I like to think of them as. But that's just me.
I have to throw in here too because I'm sort of like Shane here. I came from the NWA WCW days, so like the first time that I actually got back into WWE and they appeared and they were just calling them the Legion of Doom, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this is fucking Road Warriors. What are they doing here?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too, is if you were a mainly WWF guy, you probably saw the Legion of Doom as a knockoff of Demolition. But if you were a WCW NWA guy, you were like, well, Demolition is a ripoff of the Legion of Doom. I mean, if you only watch one program, then that's probably how you saw it as. Looking back on it now, yeah, Legion of Doom is the original, or Road Warriors are the original. Demolition is the knockoff.
Yeah. And then going back to answer your side, for me, growing up, I did refer to them as Legion because that's how they were introduced to me. But now as, gotten older and just watch more of the stuff in retrospect, I do just refer to them more as the Road Warriors.
Yeah. And a lot of people might not know this, but the Legion of Doom was actually a stable in like the early 80s. I know they were in it. I believe Jake the Snake was in it. And I know there were a few other guys, but I'm kind of blanking on those names right now. But
I remember they mentioned it on their Dark Side episode.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. So moving on, we'll go with Rocky next. What's your last rivalry you want to talk about tonight?
Well, I saved probably one of the best for last because I thought we needed some time to talk about this. What we've already talked about before on this cast, but Edge and Christian versus the Dudley Boys versus the Hardy Boys. The best fucking matches of all time.
Yeah, it's
rivalries of all time. I mean,
yeah, you can't go wrong with any of like their big pay-per-view matches. WrestleMania 2000, SummerSlam 2000, the TLC, and then of course WrestleMania 17, TLC 2. Some of those spots are just fucking insane, and for the last decade or so, or the last half decade or so, it's like 4 of them are retired. Somehow the fucking Hardy Boys are still wrestling. Which Matt Hardy, he had a really bad concussion a couple weeks ago at the AEW pay-per-view where he fell off a ladder and actually landed on concrete, and the back of his head just slammed into the concrete. It was fucking brutal. And Jeff Hardy is still doing these fucking ladder spots, man. I'm just like, how are these fucking guys still wrestling? Because Jeff is 43, Matt is 45, I think. Mm-hmm. I'm just like, holy fuck, man.
I totally even roll into a ring right now. Rather, I don't fucking.
Yeah, I can't roll out of bed, much less roll into a damn ring right now. I mean,
yeah. It's like you turn 35 and you just fucking start falling apart. But these motherfuckers are still doing crazy shit in the ring.
Yeah, I'm sure all they take is ibuprofen too. So
yeah.
I'll take 2 doses of that ibuprofen.
Yeah. What the bottle says anyway, right?
Right.
So out of the 3 teams, I guess I'll ask this question to everybody. Out of the 3 teams, which one was your favorite? I'll start off with Rocky.
Well, it would have to be Edge and Christian. Like, I love Edge and Christian. It's very hard to pick between the Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian. And we've talked about this before. Fuck the Hardy Boys. I think they suck. They're only good in matches. They fucking suck in every other way. But Edge and Christian, I just fucking love them. They're great as a team, and they're both great as solos careers. I love the Dudleys together, but they didn't live up to like the lasting power of Edge and Christian. When I think of them two, I'm like, they're fucking great.
What about you, Shane?
Probably Hardy Boys. I don't think you got any great promo cutters there, but there's some seriously great talent in all those guys as far as performers. And I'd like to know how many damn ladders and chairs and tables they actually broke. If we could get a number on that, that'd be cool. Get some stats. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think Matt's definitely the better promo guy, but it took him a long time to like get there. It wasn't until he started doing the whole he kind of got there a little bit when he was doing the Mattitude thing around 03, 04. But it wasn't until he did.
Is that when he started putting the eyes on his eyelids? Is that about the time he started doing that?
No.
Oh, okay.
This is like 03 when the Hardys kind of split up for a while.
Oh, okay.
And he was doing it was Mattitude, and like Matt facts would appear on the screen and shit like that. Like, oh, Matt doesn't like mustard on his hot dogs, or just some stupid shit like that. But I don't think he became a great promo guy until he started doing the whole broken Matt Hardy thing and delete and all that stuff. What about you, Jose? Out of the three teams, which one was your favorite?
I would go with Rock and say Edge and Christian too. I mean, I like the Dudleys a lot, but mainly I would say Edge and Christian had the best turnout, basically, because aside from them being a fun comedic tag team, they were both great in the ring. And when they broke off, they both had, really good in-ring solo careers. I mean, Edge obviously is a Hall of Famer. Christian's going to be a Hall of Famer. And even looking at Edge now coming back, I mean, he can still cut a great promo. Christian can still do a good promo. I think they, in the long run, had the better careers out of all six.
Mm-hmm. My answer would also be Edge and Christian. And as a tag team, they were 7-time tag team champions. And as solo wrestlers, Edge is a 11-time world champion. He main evented WrestleManias, multiple intercontinental U.S. Tag teams. Christian also, he's a 4-time world champion. He never got to main event in WrestleMania, but he also won intercontinental titles and European titles and other tag titles. But promo-wise, I think they're the best ones out of all of them. Edge a little bit more than Christian, but yeah, just really successful guys, and they're guys that started as a tag team and mid-carders and just worked their way up. That definitely.
The Dudleys. Go ahead.
Well, just like when we first saw him, they was fucking understudies to what was his name? The fucking vampire.
Gangrel.
Yeah.
The Brood.
I
will say the Brood had one of the best theme songs of all time. I don't care what anybody says. And the entrance was pretty great too. What were you gonna say, Shane?
Oh, I was gonna say, like the Dudleys. I swear, they had pretty good promos, like in ECW and even in TNA, they had like pretty good promos. But it's like they got the WWE, and it's like I don't know if words just left them, or if they had brain farts, or just forgot how to talk, or what happened. But just it's like they could cut promos everywhere else, but not here. I don't know why.
Well, when they first came from ECW to WWE, they were probably afraid of these motherfuckers might cause a riot. Like some of the promos the Dudleys cut in ECW, I can't even repeat right now because it is
cancel culture.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I don't even remember them cutting promos in WWE that much. I mean, and if they did, it was 5 seconds. So maybe were they afraid that the Dudleys would?
But Bubba dropped a few F-bombs, and I'm not talking about the word fuck. Or telling some lady if she's teaching her daughter how to suck dick. I don't think that would fly. But yeah, definitely check out any of their TLC matches. You're gonna see some crazy fucking shit. Which it's crazy to say this, but some of those matches may be a little bit tame compared to some of the shit they try to do now in ladder matches. Because that's the thing with wrestling, man. You gotta fucking top whatever the last match did. If you try to show somebody the Razor Shawn ladder match today, they're probably gonna find it not as exciting as we did the first time we watched it.
Yeah, it'll be boring to them in comparison to seeing, a 450 off a ladder or a shooting star press off a ladder or anything like that.
Or Jeff doing a swanton onto two guys through two tables.
The first time that you watch, when you first watched the TLC matches, that was the whole match. Every single match was like a jaw drop match. It was from one scene to the next. You were like, what the fuck is going on? Through the whole match. And they were amazing. But I will always consider them to be the best matches of all time. Nobody else.
Yeah, I think my favorite moment in that TLC match, in the second TLC match at WrestleMania 17, is when Jeff is hanging, holding the title belts in the air, trying to pull them off, and Edge jumps off a 20-foot ladder to spear him. And it's like, holy fuck. There's an interview where William Regal said that had he known that they were doing that spot, he would have talked them out of it. Because Edge himself said that he almost knocked himself out doing that spear. If I guess Jeff's hand got in front of his face as they were going down, otherwise he would have slammed face first into the mat and he would have knocked himself out. All right, so moving on, Jose, who's your last rivalry you want to talk about?
Last one, and I kind of moved around because we just talked about him earlier. It will be Stone Cold versus Bret.
Great rivalry, man.
Great rivalry. You had, again, one of the great WrestleMania matches.
Definitely top 5,
top 10 in most people's list, where you had WrestleMania 13, the I Quit match, the double turn in that match, Stone Cold passing out with a bloody face. And even before that, you had how Bret turned heel at that point in time and how he became a great heel and really became comfortable on the mic as a heel and just cutting promos in general. Reforming the Hart Foundation and just getting these great back and forths with him and Stone Cold. and what's really what was the start of Stone Cold's rise, and getting him to where he would get eventually.
Yeah, I remember the beginning of this rivalry started around a little bit before Survivor Series '96, where Bret had kind of left after WrestleMania 12, and then Austin just kept talking shit to get him back. He's like, "You call yourself the Hitman? Well, here's what I think about you. Why don't you put an S in front of that nickname or whatever?"
Yeah, and that's what I really think about you.
Yeah, and that's how I really feel about you. And their Survivor Series '96 match, it's a really good match. I think it gets overshadowed by the WrestleMania match just because of how violent it is. But the Survivor Series match is actually really good too. But yeah, that double turn at WrestleMania 13, like just some of the gore in that match and crazy chair shots they're taking. This is way before Austin had his neck issues, so he was a different type of wrestler before his neck injury.
Oh yeah,
because before his injury, he was a very good technical guy. He was up there with, say, a Bret or a Shawn, and how he could be as a wrestler. He really had to change his style after his neck injury. But yeah, can you think of when you think of WrestleMania, one of the most iconic moments is that when Bret has him in the sharpshooter,
and Stone Cold
and the blood is just pouring down Austin's face, and he never gave up. They just stopped the match.
Yep, Ken Shamrock was the ref, and he calls it off.
Yeah, and like you said, Austin came in as the heel, Bret was the face, and by the end of the match, Bret was the heel, and Austin was now the face. I don't think – I'm trying to think if they've ever been able to pull that off again. But it's definitely a great example of the double turn. Any favorite Austin Bret memories, Rocky?
No, this is actually this is like early in the days that I don't remember too much about. So I don't really have too much about this. The only thing that I really, because I only look at this at like in retrospect, because I didn't watch it when it originally happened. But the turn and the blood is what I took away from watching this in retrospect. And the turn is like one of the things that really gets me. The fact that they were able to go into the match and then come out as like completely different. That surprises the hell out of me if they actually able to pull that off. And I don't know. Maybe it's because like I look at this as retrospect, but it even surprises me to this day because like I only think of Bret Hart as the heel, nothing else. So the fact they went into this match as Bret Hart as the good guy, just like it blows my mind. And the fact that they were able to turn it through this is like it's just amazing to me.
Bret had an incredible 97, like late 96, 97. His heel run during that stuff was really good. I just say he had a great 97, but up until at least November.
Yeah.
Until they screwed him. But
because you even had the Royal. I was gonna say you even had the Royal Rumble where Austin, was eliminated by Bret, but snuck back in, eliminates Bret, and then that leads to the Fatal 4-Way, in your house.
That Royal Rumble too is great because Austin comes in at like number 5, and up until number 21 or so, he's like beating the shit out of everybody. He's eliminating everybody. He's pretty much been unstoppable. And then at like number 21, Brett's music hits, and Austin looks like he just saw a fucking ghost coming down to the ring. He does such a great job of selling it. It also has one of my favorite Royal Rumble memories, just to get on a little bit of a tangent. So Austin and Brett are fighting, and then the next number out is Jerry Lawler's music hits, and he's at the commentary table, and he takes off his jacket or whatever, and Lawler's like, "Watch this, McMahon." He's like, "It takes a king." And he takes off his headset, goes into the ring, and Bret Hart literally uppercuts him once. And Lawler flips over the top rope out of the ring, gets back on the mic set, and he's like, "To know a king." he finishes his sentence or whatever. And he just sits back down. And then he basically acts like he was never in the match the rest of the night on commentary. Weren't you in the match, King? He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." But what about you, Shane? Any favorite Austin Hitman?
I'm kind of like Rocky in that we were watching the other channel, the bad guys. Where the bad guys at? On during that time. But I'll tell you this about the Hitman. As far as how I feel about the Hitman, I think he's one of the greatest names in wrestling history. But I saw an interview with him like later on, and he was talking about he acted butthurt because Austin ended up winning over the crowd, and he didn't win the crowd like he thought he was going to be, or he wasn't going to be the babyface like he thought he was going to be, and he was like crying because I'm trying to be an upstanding role model, and here this guy's cussing every breath, and the fans just love that, and I don't understand it. And that's how he was acting toward the whole situation. And when I saw that interview with him, I was like, when did Bret the Hitman Hart become such a crybaby? When did he start like bitching about stupid stuff like that? And that's how I feel about Bret. And that was one of the things that I saw that, just kind of made me go, really, Bret? Really? It just changed my mind about Bret after that. It really did.
One of my favorite heel Bret promos is when they're in Pittsburgh and he's like, "If the United States were to get an enema, this is where you'd stick the hose."
I gotta throw in here though to put on Shane. Bret Hart is the most butthurt ex-wrestler that ever existed, and it's fucking great. He's the most person in the world, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I love his bitter attitude, and everything he does since he retired is fucking great. It's like watching a train wreck that you do not want to look away from.
That's a great description. I'll give you that.
The stuff that he says in interviews, and what makes him so great is that the person he's talking about is a foot away from him, and he's just looking at him like, fuck you, and fuck your face. And he doesn't give a shit at all. It is great. It is the best thing that I've ever seen. I am so glad that WWE Network keeps on bringing him back for interviews.
Oh, that is a fact, because he gives zero fucks.
But my thing was, if he... Go ahead.
What were you going to say, Shane? No.
I figured he could use that to his advantage, because he didn't mean for it to work out like Rocky is seeing it from Rocky's perspective. It just, to me, he was coming off as just a butthurt individual that wants to, fucking whine and cry. You're a professional wrestler. Use it to your advantage. Become the asshole. But I just never saw him do that.
I was going to say, I could understand why he's so bitter now. I mean, the guy gave his health to the wrestling world. His brother died, man. It's like, so I could understand why he could be so bitter at times. But yeah, sometimes it sucks to hear how bitter he's gotten with stuff. I was such a big fan. Like in the '90s, Bret Hart was my guy. You know, I wasn't a Shawn fan at all in the '90s. I mean, obviously he was a very talented guy. It wasn't until Shawn came back in 2002 and uh, became almost like a better person in it, inside and outside of the ring, that I kind of flipped a little bit. So when it comes to the '90s, I'm definitely a Bret Hart mark, but when it comes to the 2000s, I kind of flipped over to Shawn. Um, but yeah, it's go ahead.
I just want to say, I just want to tell this to like to you, Shane, and to like the listeners. But if you want to see the best Bitter Bret interview there is, go on the WWE Network and watch the Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart interviews about the Montreal screw job. They are fucking so sweet. Like you had.
How long after did it happen? How long?
This is like 15 years later or something. It's
okay. Okay.
Shawn
And
Michaels looks like
JR is conducting the interview.
Shawn Michaels looks like a deer caught in headlights after every single thing that Bret Hart says. It is fucking great.
Okay, I've never seen this, so maybe Bret Hart will redeem himself with me and become the asshole that he should have been, and I will see. I will watch it as soon as we get done here.
Watch it.
He's basically telling Shawn, like, fuck you, without actually saying the words fuck you to him. It's an interview conducted by JR. It's like maybe 50 minutes, an hour.
I'll check it out.
Yeah. Definitely worth the watch.
And I'm actually surprised no one put the Bret Shawn rivalry on their list, but it's I'm sure it'll come up whenever we discuss this topic.
Nobody put it on their list, but we're sitting there freaking talking about it, you know? I mean, can't get away from the damn thing.
Yeah, we can't get away from it. It'll come up at any point. What else could be said about that rivalry that hasn't already been said?
Yeah. All right. So moving on to my last one on the list, and we'll be calling it a night after that, is Vince McMahon versus Ted Turner. The ultimate rivalry. I mean, we could call it that. I mean, they never actually got in the ring and fought each other. But yeah, I mean, this is why we're here as wrestling fans, you know. WWF versus WCW. All the petty shit that they would do to each other, suing each other over characters, and we're going to create Clash of the Champions to put up against WrestleMania so your buy rate isn't as good. Or Vince McMahon threatening pay-per-view companies that if they carry the WCW pay-per-view, they can't carry the next WrestleMania. You know, oh, Scott Hall sounds too much like Razor Ramon. We're suing you.
Yep.
Oh, we lost Shane. Oh, no, wait,
I'm
he's
back.
back.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
And one of my favorite stories is Ted Turner. After Ted Turner bought WCW, he calls up Vince. First thing he does is call Vince, and he tells Vince, "Hey, I just bought me a wrestling company." And this is how Vince tells the story, you know. So, you know, he says wrestling to get that southern drawl in there. And Vince is just like, "Yeah, well, I'm in the entertainment business," and just hangs up on him. It's, you know, I don't know how much they actually hated each other, because in the long run, you know, Ted Turner had Eric Bischoff as his figurehead and a few other guys. But yeah, I mean, it's the closest Vince McMahon and WWF ever came to going out of business was Ted Turner and WCW. Any thoughts on Vince and Ted, Rocky?
Well, yeah, I got lots of thoughts on this. But honestly, you know, looking back in like retrospect about everything that happened, it's really surprising that WWE won. Maybe it's because Vince was, you know, more focused and Ted didn't have. He just let somebody else run the company. But I mean, you're talking about Ted Turner. Vince is rich. I mean, Vince is not a poor man by any means, but he doesn't hold a candle to fucking Ted Turner's money. So the fact that Vince was able to beat Ted Turner in this entertainment industry is fucking amazing, honestly. And I just, I mean, hats off to Vince. I mean, he fucking, even though he's not a poor man, I mean, he's a rich guy. He took down the big guy. I mean, Ted Turner was, you know, he was the fucking shit back in those days. I mean, fucking TBS, TNT, all these fucking like major networks. And Vince took him down.
He owned the Braves, man. He owned the Atlanta Braves, for God's sakes.
Oh, we're talking. Vince fucking took him down because he knew the business, and you know, just hats off to Vince. I am sad that WCW is gone, but I give props to Vince for, like, I mean, he pulled it off. He not only did he pull it off, like, he brought in a WCW NWA fan like me to watch WWE during the wars because I thought it was just as good or even better at times. And that's saying quite a bit because I gave two shits about WWF until my friend like came up and told me I needed to watch it. So.
What about you, Jose? Any Vince Ted memories or WWF versus WCW?
I mean, like when you said that part, that way Vince tells that story, lets you know that they were not in the same mindset to compete. Whereas when Ted bought the company, he said, I bought a wrestling company thinking, okay, it's wrestling. And Vince like, no, my mind's over here. Entertainment, this is just an aspect of it. So that alone lets you know that their mindsets were completely different. And then, of course, Ted just bought the company. He never really had influence in it. Whereas Vince, this was his company. He bought it from his dad. He put his time and effort into it. He was running it. To this day, he still runs it. 75 years old, and he's still the one calling the shots. Whereas, you know...
Yeah, Vince is going to die in that chair.
Exactly. Whereas, you know, he had Bischoff running it, and then he had, you know, committees and all these other people just running until it completely went out of business. Now, as far as the memories for WCW and WWF goes, was obviously the constant, you know, switching the channel every Monday night. Or, you know, if it was, you know, any of the other ancillary shows, you know, Thunder, watching that, or watching Saturday Night Main Event, Superstars, you know, Wrestling Challenge, and just if they were, you know, going neck to neck, watching, you know, those shows go and just going back and forth between them. I mean, it did more for wrestling than anything else because that competition grew so many fans, and you had the highest, you know, attention that it ever had, and it made the most money that it probably could have had at that time. I mean, because obviously WWE right now, you know, it's worth making money hand over fist in spite of itself. But during those times, you know, when WWF was really on the ropes, that competition was what really brought them around and ultimately got them the win.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Shane?
Rocky's right. Back then in the '90s, Ted Turner, I mean, he owned Atlanta basically. I mean, he had more money than God, and Vince was basically, fighting for his life. And I think Ted had the mindset of like he owned the Braves, go out and buy the best players you can buy. So it's kind of like probably what he was buying into with the WCW. They went out and bought Hogan, and Luger came back. They was buying all the names, and then WWE was reeling a little bit. They had the Blue World Order, for God's sake, the BWO. Yeah. So, Vince was reeling. He decided, okay, we've got to home grow these guys. Started home growing them. Ted's guys got old, and it worked out for Vince, of course. But that put wrestling in the national spotlight, though. I mean, by Ted buying it and Bischoff doing what he did, it put wrestling in the national spot. I mean, back when there was a TV Guide, those guys were on the cover of TV Guide for like 4 weeks straight, man. I mean,
yeah, when TV Guide was a big thing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's a big deal, or it was a big deal. And
I always love how WCW would have the 605 time slot just so that they could get their own square, basically, in the TV Guide.
Yeah. But I guess that was the golden years of wrestling now. I mean, but I've told Rocky this before, but if you watch Fox News and CNN News, like those guys act like so much like 90s wrestlers, it's not even funny, that Vince wishes he had a product right now as good as CNN and Fox News talking about each other. But it was unheard of, man, the WCW and WWE thing.
Yeah, one of my I think the issues with WCW is two things. One, they weren't very successful at having like those homegrown talent wrestlers. When you really think about it, they only had one guy who was like homegrown talent, and that was Goldberg.
Yeah.
And secondly, and Tony Schiavone's talked about this a lot on his podcast, What Happened When. And I somewhat agree with him. The problem with WCW is that Ted Turner and the executives looked at it more as a TV product and not a pay-per-view product. So
that's very true. Yeah, very true.
So because it was on TNT, the executives and all that, they expected big TV ratings. So Bischoff would give away Hogan versus Goldberg's on Nitro for the first time. Like, do you not think that would have been one of the biggest pay-per-view matches of all fucking time?
Yeah, absolutely.
And whereas Vince and WWF was more like, well, we'll give you big storylines on television, but we're, if you really want to see this match or payoff, then you're going to have to order the pay-per-view. And that's where I'm going to make my money. So WCW gave away too much on television, in my opinion. And that's something Tony Schiavone talks about a lot. Like, you would give away these big matches that people would have paid to see.
Yeah, to go on that, to go on that, like you say, like they could have saved Hogan versus Goldberg for a pay-per-view, but instead on a pay-per-view you get Jay Leno and Karl Malone versus Hogan and Rodman.
Yeah.
Well, I have to agree with you on this because as a WCW fan, I never bought WCW pay-per-view ever. But every single year, I bought WrestleMania. So That tells you like the way it goes right there.
Yeah, I mean, on Monday Nitro, yeah, like you said, you were just giving too much away. So that definitely hurt them in the long run. So before we sign off, will we be talking Vince McMahon versus Tony Khan one day, or what do you guys think?
It'll be a conversation, but I don't think it'll be a very long conversation.
Yeah, I know,
mean,
Rocky. You said you don't really watch AEW that much. I tried watching it. If I hear something really good, I'll check it out. But I'm not a weekly watcher. What about you, Jose?
I mean, I'll give TNT credit. They are putting the marketing behind it. They promote it with every other big show that they have on their network. And they're putting, the pedal behind it. The shows have definitely gotten better since the start. It still just doesn't feel anything that big yet. Like, their homegrown talent is still in the wings because everybody that's kind of in the bigger spot are all ex-WWE guys.
Yeah.
So
I've went on this tangent before. I'll say it again. Why is Kenny Omega not the face of your company?
Yeah, and I think they're finally going to start making that turn now that they've split him and Hangman Page up. So I think they might be starting on that program now. But, is it a year too late where, maybe you could have started off with him already while he still had a lot of the heat from New Japan?
Yeah, I don't mind that Jericho was their first champion, but Omega should have definitely been their second champion.
Yep.
Have you guys heard about if Lesnar has signed with AEW? I heard he was in talks with them, or he's in negotiations with AEW right now.
He's not under contract at WWE at the moment.
No,
but from what I heard is that he still has some type of verbal agreement with WWE, where basically like
a verbal agreement.
Like look, we're not using you at the moment, so there's no reason to have you under contract or whatever.
I mean, he knows better. He knows that Vince would sell his soul if he could get it on paper, for God's sake. So I mean, I would.
Oh yeah. I think they're just waiting. They're just waiting so they can get a crowd back, and then they'll sign him to a new contract, right? Because like Rene said, it's more like a verbal. We're like, well, we don't have anything, and we really don't need to use you right now until we get live crowds back. Once we get like the big crowds back, then they'll just re-sign them.
Well, Heyman is still working for WWE, and Lesnar and Heyman are like, that's not just a television thing. Like, Heyman's literally his actual agent.
Is he really?
Yeah, like that. Like, he's actually his lawyer or whatever.
Huh. Hey, Rocky, I want to get Paul Heyman to be my lawyer, be my agent. What do you think about that? I want to call it up.
Make him call himself Dangerously, not.
Okay. I want to get him to call you, and he's going to talk about this Roll and Rock podcast thing about keeping me on here. It ain't going to be no verbal agreement either, pal.
Fine.
But yeah, like Heyman and Lesnar are really like great friends outside of WWE. Going back to WCW giving away a bunch of shit for free. just look at Brock Lesnar. Since he came back in 2012, he has not had one single Raw match, and has only had one SmackDown match in 8 years. So basically, if you want to see Brock Lesnar wrestle, you have to fucking either subscribe to the network or buy the pay-per-view. And the one match he had on SmackDown was like 10 seconds. He basically squashed some guy in 10 seconds. That's it. In 8 years. Meanwhile, fucking WCW is giving you Hogan, Bill, Goldberg for free.
That's insane to think that. Damn, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
you're right. They gave away, their best damn match ever. But, when the writing goes and the storyline goes and everybody's in the fucking NWO, then you really ain't got nothing to give away anymore anyways. So, I think they're, not only giving away shit, but just having a poor product at the time.
yeah, and NWO was good when they were first introduced, and I'll give it up to the first, when it was the first like 6 or 7 guys. So when it was Hogan, Nash, Hall, Big Show or Giant made sense, and DiBiase made sense because they were like, oh, here's all these NWO commercials, and they were paid for by the NWO. And then, oh, okay, DiBiase's part of the group, of course, because he's the $1 Million Man or whatever. So, of course, he's the one buying the advertisements. So that makes sense.
He just walked around and laughed all the time. He just, ha, 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 and that's all he did. But it was cool.
Yeah, and then when X-Pac or Six joined, I was like, okay, yeah, well, of course, he's friends with Nash and Hall. So, of course, he's in the group. And then when Bischoff joined, all right, yeah, he's running the company, sure. All right, that was right there. That's the perfect version of the NWO. But then when you had fucking Horace Hogan and Vincent and who
the Water Boy,
yeah, yeah, fucking.
Hey guys,
Bischoff,
we just made the ring announcer. We just made the ring announcer part of the NWO.
Fucking.
I have to disagree with you on this. I think it was still good. Like when they started, it got shitty, like as it went along. But when they started fighting amongst themselves, I thought it actually took a good turn, and I actually started liking it. But I will say that you're right. Like once every single person became NWO, which I mean I don't know who wasn't NWO toward the end. Everybody was part. There was no WCW anymore. There was NWO.
Well, they had freaking pay-per-views. Pay-per-view NWO. I mean, who the hell are you wrestling?
Yeah. And then you had freaking, like you said, all right, it's NWO. Then it's NWO Black and White. Then it's NWO Wolfpack. Then it's Silver and B Team and NWO 2000.
I really liked that actually.
And then you have the LWO, and then ECW does the BWO, and then you have NCAA and fucking MLB and whatever 50 other factions they threw in there.
NWO Japan.
NWO Japan. And then you had 2 NASCAR guys that were driving NWO cars, and they were NWO, and I was like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. So
like you said, fucking Bischoff's limo driver was NWO for life, man.
I mean, they basically became the fidget spinner of the 90s, the NWO did, is what they became. So
fucking Buff Bagwell's mother was NWO. It was fucking never ending, man.
All I got to say is, fuck you for life.
I agree. I mean, I'm for life too, man. For life forever. But it became too much at one time. You can't sell something if it sucks.
Fuck you, Rene.
See, Rocky, you're a mean drunk. You're on your 3rd beer, just saying "fuck you" to everybody. Well, fuck you too, sir.
Fuck yous are flying now.
My 6th beer, not my fucking 3rd.
But like I said, these are just some of our favorite rivalries. Are they the greatest of all time? You know, that's up to the viewer. But you know, hopefully you guys heard some of the great matches we talked about, and you'll go check them out. And if you guys like what you heard, you know, leave a review on whatever podcast app you use, or leave a review on our YouTube channel, or leave some comments. Talk about your favorite rivalries. Any last words before we sign off, gentlemen? Rocky?
Just for life. Fuck you.
Jose?
Too sweet.
Shane?
Yeah, actually, I think I'm going to start me a rivalry tonight with Mr. Roland Robinson. I'm going to tell you something, Roland. You've been talking.
Oh.
Oh, no, it froze.
I'm coming for you. You better get ready. Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate that. And since we're all throwing up symbols, I guess I'll end it with a Stone Cold salute. Have a good night, everyone. And thank you to Rocky, Jose, and Shane for joining me tonight.
Thank you, guys.